All right, so we'll start doing some intros here. Give more people a chance to hop in before the demo, but basically, thank you all for attending today's paperless preview. My name is Cameron Schaafstall. You can call me Cam. I work on our implementation project management team. So I'm responsible for working with our services team to implement new customers. Ali invited me today to speak to you guys about how Paperless Parts helps you operate at maximum efficiency. So for today's session, before we get into the agenda, I want to talk through just paperless parts as a whole, in case some of you haven't been familiar with paperless. I do see a couple of familiar faces here in the attendees list. Basically, with these four pillars, areas of paperless parts, we look to simplify, streamline, and consolidate all of your coding functions into one system to try to make things more efficient overall. Some common categories that we target here are workflow management. So getting all of your quote tracking resources all under one hood. The costing automation, trying to bring you more advanced formulas, consistent calculations to let your team get to cost and price faster without sacrificing any accuracy. Very important is that prioritizing that customer experience with a clean quoting workflow that brings you to a clean customer facing quote. And also, hopefully, those first two bring you faster quotes that help your customers out that way. And then last but not least, with connected APIs, we're looking to reduce the workload of your shop team. Once you have everything built in paperless parts, let's take advantage of that information and not make people enter it twice by trying to push that to different connected systems where we can support different integrations. Now, these are pretty much the big four aspects of paperless parts. And what I want to talk through today is a laser focus on the workflow management piece. I would say in onboarding, what I see a lot of the times is people get, rightfully so, very excited about the costing automation or the customer quote facing experience or the integration to ERPs. But workflow management to me is something that while you will be excited about it once you see it, it is a big part of our onboarding to understand your quoting process and work it into paperless parts so that we can reduce some time spent and really gain a lot of efficiency in your overall workflow on its own. So for today, we are going to cover three features first. To me, these are three features that you can use on their own, but when you combine them together and you get pretty good building a quoting process around these three features and you use them together, you can really start to shave time off of your quoting process just on the process alone. Not talking through automation, not talking about how the integration will remove data entry. Process alone, we can definitely cut some time and make this more efficient. For the demo, when it comes to these core areas, RFQ intake, quote management, team collaboration, and quote review, these are the categories of actions that I see every shop include in their current process, taking in RFQs and tagging them, actually managing the quote and making sure that gets done on time, talking to the team, and also reviewing quotes. All of these steps can typically operate with other systems, meaning you might be using Outlook to send emails back and forth. You might be manually updating a quote tracking sheet in Excel or in a shared drive. You might be tracking quote files in customer folders. Maybe you're running around physically passing papers throughout the shop. A lot of cases, I see that there is usually a trade-off, whether you want to go for speed and add extra risk that maybe you're not sending those emails, maybe you're not updating that tracking sheet, but in not doing those actions, you can move faster versus there's an accuracy or a risk mitigation philosophy where if you are using those tracking sheets, if you are taking the time to send those emails, we're going to make sure that no balls are dropped in the quoting process. What I'm going to hope to show you guys today is that with paperless as a centralized system and heavily leveraging those key features I've got above there, we can look to remove Outlook, quote tracking sheets, and other file storage external systems from the mix, try to give you one central hub to work with all of your quoting, and basically give everybody a lighter framework for keeping track of everything in a clean central system. So we've got a couple more attendees here. What I'm going to do first is pull open Paperless Parts and get into a bit of a demo here. So right now we are in our Paperless Parts demo account. I understand that a lot of people probably haven't seen Paperless Parts yet. As a quick disclaimer, today, like I said, is going to be focused heavily on the workflow from start to finish, taking an RFQ from an email, getting it logged into a quote, passing that quote between different team members, getting it sent to a customer. I am going to gloss over the actual costing formula side of things. So I'm definitely going to jump right to a unit price and fudge the estimating because I'm not an estimator. I will say if anyone is curious after this demo and really wants to see, okay, the workflow looked cool, but I really want to see how the actual cost and price get calculated, we can absolutely put you in touch with the sales team, give you guys a demo. Please reach out to Ali and I, and we can give you kind of a part 2 to this training. But for everybody in the system right now, what I first want to do is call out this quotes page here. Now, in this quotes page, our product team has made a pretty significant upgrade where not only do we just track all of your quotes by quote number, show the RFQ number that you may have typed in to reference a customer RFQ number, the status of the quote, the account, and the contact. This is all helpful to see. But we've added a lot of functionality with this quotes and line items views section where you can customize different filters for different things that you want to see, whether it pertains to quotes or individual line items. So jumping between the two right now, if we were to go into all quotes, you can see that we have a view here that's going to show us basically every single quote in the account. And at the surface level, I could add a filter and say, let's filter all of my quotes by the account being Paperless Parts. Very simple. So you can filter these live and make temporary filters, or you can really build these out as more robust filters that you use day in and day out. So you'll see a couple of these I have numbered, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These pages are actually going to guide us through today's demo. I'm going to show how I've built these 6 different tabs that either display quotes, like this quote 47, or display line items, like these 3, 4, and 5 tabs. And I'll show you how a quote in my workflow right here actually moves through each of these tabs. Now, the other thing to call out is if I were to open one of these quotes, another feature that's going to be pretty important for this demo is our workflows and our tasks. So if you open up an individual line item, right now we've got quote 47, we've got this cabinet assembly. If I open this up, you can see on the right here, we've got these workflow steps. So just at a high level before we jump in, this status at the top will say that this overall line item, number 1 here, is in progress. And these sub-steps make up the actual sub-steps of this line item. So for this line item to eventually become complete, we will need an outside service quote to be completed, or call out that we don't need one. We'll need to complete a material estimate, a labor estimate, and we're going to need someone to review this quote. Once all of these steps are complete, we're going to move this as fully completed. So this is our custom workflows feature that we're going to show today. In parallel to that is this chat that we have available per line item. In this chat, I'm going to show you guys some examples of different messages you can put in here, whether it's just a message that's timestamped, whether we're tagging in a teammate, or whether we're assigning a task. And you'll see pretty soon that the task is something that I'm going to really put as a high priority item for people to practice with. But outside of those features, it's time to actually show you all how this works in a bit more of a sequence. What I'm going to do is show everybody in the top right-hand corner of a Paperless Parts account, you can click on your name, you can go to settings, and every Paperless Parts user group is going to have this email forwarding section. Now, you can manually create quotes in Paperless Parts, but I'm going to show you something that our product team has built where you can copy this forwarding address that's unique to my user group here, Paperless Demo. And if I go over to my email here, I have this email from a customer saying, please quote this part. I can forward this email to that crazy email string, and I can basically also create a paperless forwarding contact in my Gmail, but all I have to do is forward that message. What's important to have in this message is that this has my first, last, and email. It's got a part number. It's got a description. it's got a quantity, and it's got a step file and a PDF. Now for this example, I'm going to be using a sheet metal component. We support sheet metal, machining alike. Other services can all be quoted in paperless parts, but for this example, I'm just going to be using this AA123 component. Now, right now, the process I'm going to model is that we have a sales team that's going to handle the customer communication from RFQ received and also sending the quotes. We're going to have an estimator named Eddie the Estimator, who's actually going to be the person filling out the routing, setup times, run times, cycle times, material estimates. And we're also going to have a purchasing member of this team that's going to help out Eddie when it comes to getting the material quotes if we need to request a requote or getting outside service costs for things like powder coat. We're also going to have a manager level review step where someone's going to come in and review that quote. Now, some people on this call might not have all of those roles broken out, work with a lot of customers where it is usually a 1 or 2 person team doing all of those responsibilities. So in this case, you might want to pay more attention to just the roles themselves, but I'm going to split this up and model out a customer that I've worked with that I think built a very clean workflow in paperless parts. So as a salesperson, I grab my customer quote. I forward that to my forwarding email address. Where does it go? So if I were to go into this quotes tab here, you could look for that new quote to show up, or I've set up this first tab here called Quote Setups Sales. Now, this tab is specially tailored to my made-up sales team here. My sales team wants to see all of the quote numbers where it hasn't been opened yet and the salesperson is unassigned. This is important because these quotes that I forward in, instead of pressing create quote and actually creating them manually, a forwarded quote hasn't been opened. It's going to show up blue here. So this just shows me, hey, let's catch this, at the start of every day or check this periodically. I want to see all the quotes that have been forwarded in so that we make sure we actually start them. So these are the quotes that need to have that quote setup step complete. As a salesperson, I can look at the quote number and also see the email subject line. Please quote this part. And I'm going to open this up and get ready to start filling out some information. Now, a lot of these steps I'm going to go through pretty quick. I'm going to fill out a lot of the header information. During your onboarding, you'll get trained on all of these things, but if you would like to see a more in-depth demo, again, reach out. We'll happily set that up for you. But going through the minimum clicks needed to set up a quote. We have that email in the top left-hand corner. You can click on this and it'll actually open up that email in a different tab. So the first section of this training that shows you that we don't need Outlook anymore. Once you forward it into paperless, if it's been a couple of days and you want to see the email, you can actually get to that email right in the preview here if you have any questions or thoughts around what the actual message contained. Now, for the RFQ number, I'm going to tag this as RFQ 22334 because that is a number the customer provided. Our paperless parts quote number is 49, but I want to be able to search for this one, so I'm going to put that in there. I'll set my due date, expiration, and there's some purple on here that's going to suggest where we're actually reading information off that email to try to cut down on some steps for the sales team here. RFQ receive date, different from quote started. Quote started is going to be the day and time that I actually created this paperless quote, but we might want to log when we actually got this from the customer. We're reading this purple here, this 23 right from the email, and I can just click apply to let our automation take precedence there. For the contact, usually you'll have an option if you create a quote manually to select a contact, but it actually automatically selected me because my email was picked up off that email and it already exists in our paperless parts contacts page. If it didn't pick me up, it would look like this, and you could look through the list of all your contacts and it still shows a suggestion up at the top that we really think that it's Cam based on what was in that email. On my made-up sales team here, we're going to say that at this step, I'm filling out the header information. I want to tag myself as the salesperson, and we're actually going to use Sal Esperson right here as our salesperson. And at this point, we're also going to want to tag an estimator once I'm ready for the estimator to work on it. So I'm actually going to leave that blank for now, and I'm going to come down here into our quote files. So this is a general quote files page. It includes every quotable part that's going to be included in quote 49. So I quoted part AA123, that pulled in from the email. AA123 step and PDF were both included as attachments. Maybe I realized the customer sent me a separate email and I want to add in another component, I can also manually add additional components to these files here. And I'm going to put in a bracket step file and a PDF in here. So at this stage, my sales team is setting up the quote by getting all the files loaded in here. But now what we want to do is actually move these files out of the general quote files area and create different line items. There's a lot of ways that you can drag and drop parts into the line items page and create a line item that way. We have some additional automation available with those emails. You can see the purple suggestion here. If I use bulk create, it's actually going to pull up that table that I put in that email here and suggest that we know the part number, description, and the quantities based on the contents of that table. I can add a revision here, and you can also manually add part numbers here. So I just put in those bracket pieces after the fact. So I put in bracket, revision A, this is a bracket, and I'll put in my quantities. I can then hit create line items. And based on the details of that table, it's going to create two line items that right now don't actually have a part associated with it. And these line items are looking at the file names in the supporting file section. So I can just hit add to line items. And if there is a match on the part number, it's going to scoop up both the PDF and the step file for each of these. So I scooped all those up and it actually combined those. If I were to open up this bracket, you can see step file is pulled in here and we have the PDF also included in that file. Now, the last step for my customer service or sales team here is to actually confirm the part numbers. Now, when you look at these part numbers and quantities, there is also a purple suggestion here. Because we uploaded a PDF, you can click on that part number and see that, yes, I typed in that bracket number, but we're also reading that off the PDF. So if you didn't actually use that bulk create and you manually updated a part file, but you had a PDF attached, you could actually click this field and say, yep, let's pull bracket from the PDF because Paperless is reading that PDF. From here, in my process, I would at this point leave it to the estimator. I've taken an RFQ from a customer email, created a new quote, logged my parts and their part numbers into different line items in the quote, made sure any other supporting documents were included. And at this point, I'm ready for an estimator to take a look at it. So now I'm going to hit estimator here. I'm going to tag Eddie the estimator, and I'm actually going to assign Eddie to both line items. So we have a place at the top of the quote to say that Eddie owns this quote as a whole, but also we can assign Eddie to individual line items for tracking. And if we need to farm out one of these and have a different estimator help out, you can say that maybe this other line item goes to somebody else. As the salesperson, I'm done. I'm going to leave this, go back to my email and get ready to forward my next quote. But now switching hats here. A lot of this is now going to come up to Eddie's responsibilities. That was step one for sales. Eddie's likely going to use the start quoting view I've set up here. So going into number two, when we assigned Eddie as the estimator on that quote, a couple things happened. That quote 49 now got logged in Eddie's dashboard here. So he wants to see all the quotes where the estimator is Eddie the estimator. He also got an email. That field also triggers whether Eddie's at his desk or not. He's going to get an email saying, hey, by the way, Sal tagged you on a quote. You've got some work to do. So whether Eddie's looking for more of a passive handoff and he's looking for this dashboard on a recurring basis, he's always in Paperless checking it, he'll find the quotes he has to work on in here. Or maybe he's looking for more of an active handoff. He will get an email saying that you're up at bat. Now, again, you can filter these out a little bit better. Maybe I don't care about those expired quotes. I only want to see the quotes that Eddie is working on that are not sent yet. So I can add a filter here for status and say our quote status is going to be draft, or well, you don't want to see any of these other ones because that means that the estimate's actually complete. So we'll say just drafted quotes for this. And I can hit save changes to actually make that a permanent change to Eddie's view here. So if I'm Eddie, opening up this filter on a Monday morning, I can look at quote 49, pull that open. And again, no Outlook required, no walking around the shop, no passing papers back and forth. Sal knows this made it to Eddie. Eddie knows he got it. When he comes in here, Eddie can go in, check the email. Again, I don't have to open up Outlook. I can click this link, take a look at the email if I want to see the original source material here. And then I can go in, I'll start with this bracket here. I can open this bracket and get ready to start my estimate with these workflow steps. If I'm an estimator, first thing I'm going to do is say the overall status of this line item is in progress because I'm looking at it. Then I'm going to say, pretty common practice, let's go for outside service first. I'm going to be able to handle material and labor likely in-house. Getting an outside service quote takes time. I don't want to waste any time with that. What I'm going to do is mark this in progress to either say that Eddie is going to take this or tag in our purchasing team. For my example, I am actually going to say that Eddie's going to handle his outside service quote, but we'll pull in purchasing for material quotes. So in this case, I'll mark this in progress. I like to use the chat in conjunction with these workflow steps to actually tell the story. So kind of a quick example here. If my quote's in progress and outside service is in progress, but nothing else started, I'd likely want to see what's going on with that outside service quote. So if I'm Eddie, I can just send a quick note in here. You can use the chat to actually message people back and forth. You can also send these chats basically to yourself. I've encouraged people to use this kind of like a quoting journal. That way, if Eddie's out sick, anybody can go in to the help out dashboard. And right now, this is a purchasing based dashboard. And it's going to show us any material in progress quotes. We could look for quotes that are also in progress for outside service. And we can track that status. Take off material here. So if I were to build a dashboard just for tracking the outside service, Eddie's out of the office, somebody can see, okay, for this bracket line item, outside service is in progress. What does that mean? Who's actually working on it? Open up the chat. Oh, Cam sent this email or Eddie sent this email today. He's on top of it. We're actually not really delayed here. Again, this is another option for not having to dig through Outlook, not having to find more emails to figure out when is the last time I pinged that vendor. And if we are pinging that vendor, Eddie can just throw in a reply here. Pinged again. And again. If we're really being a pest, we could also bring in another teammate and say, let's bring in our purchaser here. So this thread's going to start to show all my efforts to get that powder quote for this part. And then outside service step is in progress. What might also happen here is that we might assign a task to make things more formal. Right now, I'm doing this tag teammate action just to keep a note for myself and avoid the need to go dig back into Outlook to find out just how far I am with this process. I could assign a task and I can basically tag in a teammate to help me. We're actually going to do that for material. So while we're waiting for outside service, the next thing Eddie's going to do, he's going to start his material quote. And to get my material quote, I might actually open up the viewer here and actually take a look at what we need for a material. This is where we're going to pull in a purchasing team. So I'm sure with a lot of shops, if you actually have the material on hand, probably not going to do the step. You know how much you have on hand, you know the last time you purchased it. But let's say we're going for a material that we haven't purchased in a while. We want to get a requote. I could, as the estimator, open up our file here, pop over to the PDF, and parallel to that chat talking about powder quotes, I can do a quick zoom in here. Material says see notes. I can go for our notes here, and I can do an annotation to basically do a quick highlight here. And we'll include the finish just for fun. Add that annotation, add that task, and I'm going to have my purchasing person take a look at that. And every task comes with a due date. These are a little bit more high stakes than just sending a message. Those team tags where we'll put an @Cam, @John, please help me out. Those team tags do show up in Paperless as a notification, but when you add a task, those come with emails, those come with due dates. Those are really helpful for anybody that might not be in Paperless day to day. I usually like the tag teammate for estimator and salesperson communications because salespeople are likely in here entering new quotes all the time. Estimators are in here estimating all the time. But when we're working with purchasing, shop floor, people that might not be staring at Paperless all day, a task is helpful because, like I said, they'll get an email and they'll get reminders when this due date's coming up. For me, I'm going to say we absolutely need to know what that material quote is by Thursday, or else there's no shot we're going to win this or get that quote out on time. And I'm going to send this message. So I've got my message document that I'm working on outside service. I've tagged in PERT here to go for the actual material quote. Going back in, that chat is live with the quote itself too. So whether you're looking at the drawings or in this view here, you can take a look at the actual quote. And at this point, I might also take a look at labor steps and say, okay, it's time to actually build out the router. It's time to actually build out what steps, what setups and runtimes are going to be included in this part. Similar thread. I might just do that myself and say, this is in progress. I'll set my process, put my material in, and I might start to use the costing logic that we've built out during the onboarding to get some estimates for material, setup, run, outside service costs. However, if I need a little bit of help on this one too, I could leave this labor step as in progress. I could go into this part here, and maybe I want to tag in the shop floor. Maybe there's something of concern with this part. I could actually use the CAD here, do an interrogation on this, just to call out some features. And I could say, hey, let's look at this uncut face, really lock in on that. And I want to ask someone from the shop to confirm that this really isn't going to be possible. So with that feature selected from our warnings here, I can add that annotation, annotate that feature, assign a task. And this is going to be our shop floor person. And like I said, this is basically the most extreme case. A lot of times an estimator can go rip right through this, get the vendor quote, check the last material price, understand what's needed for the part. But when you need to pull in people to help out, all of these tasks, all of these workflow steps help keep track of everything. If we're going back to this quotes page, you'll see that we had step one was setting up the quote with sales. Step two was actually starting the estimate. That was the majority of what I was doing there as Eddie. And now if we look at steps 3 and 4, we have my help out line item views. So while these first views really show you the actual quote numbers that need to be worked on, line item views show us the part numbers. So you'll notice I did all of that for only one part in that quote. So the bracket's in here, but that sheet metal part's not in here yet because I haven't changed any of those statuses. Right now, I've made this number 3 help out purchasing dashboard to say, show us every part where the labor is in progress or stuck, and we have material in progress. So this is showing that this line item is waiting on a material quote. As a purchasing person, I can look at my to-do list here, click on my part, open it up, see that material is in progress, and go to my chat. And then I can see, okay, as the purchasing person, hey, please quote this material. I can click this expand button here, and it takes me directly to the part viewer. Now I can look at that annotation. If I click on it, it takes me right to the page and the view where this note was taking. So I don't need to thumb through different files or look at different pages of PDF. It takes me right to the annotation, and I can say, got it. And I'm really good at my job as a purchasing person. So I actually already have the email. Adding it now. So as that purchasing person, I'm going to mark this task resolved. In this case, Cam, pretending to be Eddie, the estimator, is going to get an email saying purchaser is done with his job here. And as that purchasing person, I don't even have to go back to the quote. I can upload that material quote as an email right on this part, which I'm going to do right here. So now with this part number on the quote, our bracket has a step file to pull geometry for our quoting. We've got our PDF that I can look at and annotate. And I have that email file that includes the material quote that we got. Looking back at the quote here, I'll go back to quote 49 and I will mark material as complete. So Eddie would take a look at that email file, confirm in this chat that that material quote has been completed, and mark this step as complete so he knows that he has entered in that material cost on the quote. And I'll just put that in here as a flat $4,000. Doing that same process again for labor. If we need help from the shop floor, we've got our help out table for the shop floor. Now for this one, I actually didn't set my status here. This is where labor is on hold, but I really want that to say labor is in progress. So we could build a similar dashboard to say, show us every part where labor is in the works, but you noticed I had it as on hold to start. That on hold tag is a little bit better for being somewhat dramatic here. So I can use on hold to say, this isn't really in progress. I have an open chat where labor is on hold because I actually asked if we can even support that uncut face on this part. So this tab will show us as a shop floor person, where are all the parts in different quotes where that labor step is actually stuck so they can jump into here and then go to the chat. Now, I noticed some differences that maybe the purchasing team likes to use tables like this and they'd like to see, just show us all the parts where materials in progress and we've been called upon. A lot of times a shop floor might not be coming into paperless parts all the time. So as a shop floor person, maybe I don't even use this dashboard for that passive handoff and I'm checking to see what work I have to do. You can actually go to the dashboard and each person has this tasks assigned to me section. It's going to show just every individual task that you would have gotten an email about. Now, I can't look at my own task here, so I could say see all tasks. And let's take a look at our shop floor person's requests. These are the requests that would have showed up in that section if I was logged in under the shop floor person. And he would have seen, okay, we need a decision if we can support this type of manufacturing. It's related to quote 49, but if the shop clicks on this, similar to how purchasing got to this quote, it'll take you right to the viewer. You can click on that feedback item. It'll zoom right in on the same feature that we were looking at with that same selection. And the shop person can say, not really, but this is a demo. So we can't actually do an uncut face like this, but we're going to try anyways. So we're going to say, okay, shop floor says we're going to go for it. Maybe that guy needs to reconsider his career. We're going to resolve that task from the shop floor. And then Eddie will get that notification, the email. Estimator comes in here, checks the task, notices, okay, shop team gave us a decision. We're going to go for it. I'm going to mark that complete once I complete my labor estimate and update setup times and run times to get our costs. Outside service was the first thing we did. Maybe after all that email I sent to vendor A is done. I just want to timestamp any action I'm taking outside of paperless, so it's really easy to track the history of this quote. So I can say, got the email. Great. And I showed you guys how to upload a supporting document right to the viewer. You can also upload supporting documents right up here. If I go to this file section, I can upload a file. And I'll add in my outside service quote. So now I've got my outside service quote. Maybe it came out to $800 for that. We've tagged it in the chat. We've added a supporting document. I can add in that. Let's see. We don't have outside service here. Add in my outside service step, throw in my cost of 800 on that. And then once that's been added, mark outside service as complete. So we've completed the main meat and potatoes of this estimate. We've got our outside service quote that came in from this thread, Cam and Eddie working together to get that from the vendor. We got our material costing figured out with the help of our purchasing team that we pulled in with this task. We also got some labor assistance where Eddie had a question about feasibility, got that confirmed from the shop floor, and we actually went for it. At this point, we filled out material, labor, and outside service for this quote. This line item is still in progress, and it's actually time for us to have somebody review this. So in my process here, based on a customer I've worked with, at this point, we'd mark all of these steps for material, labor, and outside service complete, but we'd say this overall line item is not complete until it's ready to send to the customer. So the last step we need to do is have somebody review this. What we could do is assign a task at this step and actively tag in the boss here. So this is that active handoff. And I could say this is in progress because I'm tagging in the boss here. Or by just marking that in progress, this management tab here is set up to show us all of our individual part numbers where labor is completed, the line item is in progress, materials done, outside service is done, and markups is either not started, in progress, or on hold. So again, if I'm role playing as the boss here, maybe I'm just checking this at the end of every day. What parts have my team completed that are done with all of those statuses and are waiting on me as a review? Or maybe I'm just looking for my dashboard to see when those tasks come from. I'm going to say that I'm on top of this as the boss here, and then I'm always checking this filter. Open up this line item here. That's going to take me right to the quote. Open up that bracket. And as the boss, we're going to say, yep, setup times, run times look great. Costing's all filled out. We're going to change all of these markups to 30% because I really want to make some money on this, or maybe it'll be 70 if we don't really like this customer and don't actually want to win the work. Adjusted all the markups, checking the unit prices, and as the boss in my shop, we just check the lead time, 31 days looks great. At this point, this quote is actually ready to send to, or this line item is ready to send to the customer. So I would basically say my markup review is done, but because this step, someone else could have possibly flipped this, I want to make sure I timestamp this as well. I have a lot of customers that do a formal review step where if leadership comes in to review markups and marks this done, we definitely want them to not only resolve this and confirm that, yes, this is done, but throw a reply in that checked and approved. That's timestamped. My user's username is going to be on it. Only the boss can have that Cam Schofstall tag there. And I could also include any notes. On what I did to this quote if I made any changes. At that point, in my process, we're going to say that we want to mark this overall status for this line item as complete. So right now, this line item has the status of every subset complete and the overall line item is done, meaning we've got a quantity, unit price, total, and lead time that we trust, gone through our process with the full team, and we're ready to send this to a customer. Now, from this point on, we would likely be doing those exact same steps for our sheet metal part over here. Just to call out, this chat is unique to this individual cabinet assembly. We would want to go through all of those same steps. But in my made up example here, let's say that we actually just want to get this first part out now. So what I can do is take this other item off the quote, because I know I've got one part here ready to go. We're just going to send the quote with the part that's done. This quote now has a component with every status completed. All of these individual workflow steps and tasks have been resolved. We've got notes in here. We've got supporting documentation to back up that we have all the right quotes. So anytime somebody opens up quote 49 and wonders, why did we cost it that way? When did we get that quote? All information is available in this one system. No need to dig through Outlook because the whole story is here. No need to dig through the shared drive because all the supporting documentation is loaded in here. And no need to really run around the shop because we're actually communicating via this chat. At this point, That was my step number 5 here. And that part's no longer in the management review because I actually marked that full quote item as complete. There's a number 6 saved view here called ready to send. In my shop, we have our sales team review this at the end of the day, each day, and see if there are any quotes where all the line items are complete and the quote status is draft. This shows us a quick display of all of our different quote numbers, 49, 48, and 47, the other ones I was practicing with earlier today. And 49 is the one we're looking for. I can open this up as a salesperson. Again, no need to really check with the team because I can see for this line item, it's complete. As a salesperson, I can see that all the steps are done. Do a quick audit. Did we actually complete all these steps? Great. Why are the markups set to 30%? Oh, looks like the boss came in here and set that. All right, I feel good about this. And as a salesperson, what I can do is go to the top of the quote, click Finalize. That's going to load up our default email template. I can customize from there. Add or remove other people from that email thread. BCC and CC additional emails if needed. But the to address is going to go to that customer, and it's going to CC myself because I'm also the person pressing send. And if I want to double check this as the salesperson before I get this out, I can click preview. Opens up a new tab. And I can basically get a good look at this quote as if I'm the customer in that preview format. So this is what the customer is going to see: our sales quote header information, our part details. When they select these quantities, it'll show us what that total is going to come out to. And if I feel good about the terms, conditions, and notes, I can close this tab and press send. So end to end, that is how I've trained a good amount of the shops in onboarding to use this process. And again, those different groups are broken out as if we have a individual sales team, an estimating team, purchasing team, or a shop floor team. But maybe if you're working on an estimating team where you handle the entire process end to end, you might still want to have a quote setup dashboard. It's going to show us all of the parts that have been forwarded in or freshly created that we need to check part numbers. We need to get initial notes in there. You might want to set up a dashboard for all the parts that have all the information from the customer and they're ready to go. And we might still want a review section. Maybe these aren't even for management. Maybe they're just for you to track that these are the quotes where you're almost done with them. That way, if you do end up jumping back and forth, you're covered. The last thing that I want to call out with that chat that's really helpful is that if I open up a quote here, and maybe I created a brand new quote this way. I could look up that part number and pull in that part that I quoted before to a fresh quote. And because this is a part that we've done before, we're linked to the notes from the last time. So I could remove files and redo my vendor quote, but I can also see all the discussion from the last time we quoted this. So if I added this part to a new quote, it's going to reset my statuses because I do have to go back here and, confirm that I'm going to work on this part, either confirm that I have the email from last time and I'm good to go, or redo it, go through these steps. But all of the last overrides and all of the explanation behind the decisions made to quote this part are going to be in this chat. So coming up on the last 15 minutes or so here, we've got open room for questions. Let me just look at the Q&A box here. I don't have any questions submitted now, but I would say anything's fair game. There's a chance if you have questions about the costing section here, I might recommend that we do like a demo, have you reach out to someone on our sales team. But does anyone have questions about how these saved views work? Why I would set up a process like this, how tasks work, or does anybody have a different style of quoting workflow that you'd like to see me try to model here?